Welcome to So You Become an Online or Blended Teacher. Now what? This is episode 5, The Digital Divide and Resource Equity. If your job's in an established online teaching program, it's likely that all of your students will have access to the technologies that they need. Owning an appropriate device and having stable internet access are kind of prerequisites of joining a school or a course that's based on the internet. However, if you're blending your classroom, or if your online or blended teaching is due to an emergency closure of schools, like the pandemic or habits for flooding, there might be a digital divide. What that means is that not all students live in a home where each person has access to a laptop all the time. There may be no computer at all in the home, and a limited number of smartphones, which maybe have to go to work with the parents. Which means that if schools are shut down and there are several children at home, the devices available must be shared. Some students don't even have internet access at home, and their families cannot afford hours of data plan usage. This can be compounded in an emergency closure like a pandemic or a flood, as open Wi-Fi networks at your local McDonald's or library or Starbucks, even if those exist normally, may not be available during these emergencies. In rural areas, this is especially problematic. Canada is huge, and while the big city is often well served by high-speed internet access, students living as little as an hour from a major center may not have any internet service at all. These issues were evident during emergency remote teaching, and they aren't something that can easily be addressed by the teacher in question, but there are some things that we can do. What can we do? Well, one way is to make our classes asynchronous as much as possible. Allowing students a little freedom to choose when they learn means that their devices can be shared by the people who, got to be online right now, and then passed off to others during times of less usage demand. It doesn't mean that you can never have students get together at the same time. Consider once or twice a week for a whole class activity, like maybe a Monday, let's get together and talk about what the plan for this week, and maybe a discussion activity on a Thursday. These will promote social learning and interactivity, but it also limits the constant use of resources that may need to be shared by several people. Again, students who select online or blended learning likely are not going to have these problems, but students who are thrust into it might. Communicating with the home and knowing what your school or district has available in terms of supplementary equipment that could be lent to students can be helpful too. Some students may be reluctant to admit they don't have what they need, or they may be unaware of what they need. So encourage students to talk to you privately if there is something that they need, the way you would if you suspected a student couldn't afford a field trip fee, for example. Be aware, too, of the myth of the digital native. Many people assume that because today's students grew up with computers and smartphones, they must know how to use them to learn. Blunt newsflash, they don't. Sure, they can text fluidly with one thumb, but personal use of the internet and educational use, while they do have some overlapping skills, are actually very different. In a 2009 study, Lee and Ranieri found that grade 9 students' familiarity with technology did not indicate their overall competence with school-related learning activities. Being young doesn't necessarily mean you're competent in the learning use of digital tools. Jensen et al. Talk about digital naifs. They say, while we want all students to master this ICT skill set by the time they leave the system, the diversity of their everyday experiences with ICT means that they do not all start from the same place. What needs to be made clear is that not all students are digitally native. This term denotes a privileged position in terms of gender, socioeconomic status, and geography. Therefore, the role of ICT in the classroom, in context of 21st century skills, technology, and learning, is arguably about providing access and scaffolding to students, and thereby creating educationally equitable and socially just teaching and learning environments. That's a mouthful. Scaffolding computer skills as well as course-specific skills is important for our students. This doesn't mean that online and blended teachers have to be computer experts, see episode 8, but it does mean that we need to be careful when making some assumptions about our students' online learning abilities. For example, we might want to limit the number of apps that we ask them to use in our online courses. We might provide links to how-to videos for students who maybe don't know how to upload an image from their phone into their laptop and then into your learning management system. We might want to also teach them research skills so that they understand what the difference is between Googling something and finding actual research. Anyway, these are just some ideas about how to involve some of this digital divide stuff and make it work for you. Thanks for listening. If you have questions, please contact me at this email address, and there is a references and attributions page